So, welcome everybody. This is What's Up for You, and it's July 12th, 2022. So, as Sharon has already asked for questions, so hopefully those are all going into the chat. And in the meantime, I just want to kind of check in with everybody and just see kind of what it feels like today. Um, hmm. Yeah, well, no, we're gonna go right to your questions. Um, all I can say right now is that I'm gonna say that in this group, there's an opening that's available. There's something that that wants to shift, wants to change, and let's let it let's let it shift and change today. So we don't have to wait until next month and feeling the same way. So there's something, yeah, definitely that wants to change. So all right, so let's go into the questions.
All right, this first question is, I have the intention to hold my own energetic position around my previous partner. I can get reactive around him, so my goal is to not lose myself. However, because I came aware yesterday that the intention is actually inviting him to be challenging when he is around me. I think it is correct not to let how he is holding the world to dominate how I do or overwhelm my way, but I don't need him to give me the practice of holding my own. I am looking for an adjustment in my intention or how I am holding my intention.
Um, well, let me say this first. Let's say that if he's still in your experience and if he's still offering you a something to play with, let's say something to feel, something to notice, then he's currently being of service to you. He's being of service to your own development. And so what I want to say is it's a lot of times I know in my own experience I can say, well, I don't want that anymore. Well, that doesn't feel good. I don't like that anymore. So when we say those kinds of things, we can take the action to stop somebody from being in our experience or whatever that is. But the fact is that if that is not if that is not complete, if that energy has not done the job that it's there to do for you in the first place, then either that person will come back and or somebody else will show up with exactly the same kind of energy in order to have you work that through. So instead of saying I don't want this person to be there or I don't want that reflection, and it sounds like you're trying to set a clearer intention so that you don't have that discomfort, right? Whatever that discomfort is. So, but instead of saying it that way, maybe we can shift it to this is an opportunity, this is a grace, this is that individual being of service to me so that I can feel into, not correct, not change, but just feel into some of those energies. So say somebody brings up anger or sadness or frustration or whatever that is, those energies are allowed to exist in your body. They're allowed to be present in your experience. And a lot of times when we say that person has to go away, believe me, I'm a master at this. I used to do this all the time. That person needs to go away so that I don't have to feel some of those feelings. When I shifted it to, I still feel some of those feelings every now and again, but now what's shifted in the intention, you might say, is that it's okay to feel that in my body. I'm allowed to feel anger in my body. I'm allowed to feel frustration. And if we get to the place where that person feels like they are in our presence and they're no longer bringing up stuff for us, or like you say, we don't want that information brought up from that person, we can dismiss that. We can make arrangements so that that person is not as active in our lives. But what I will say is, if that energy hasn't been integrated, hasn't been cleared, somebody else will show up to show you pretty much the same thing. So yeah, I hope that's helpful.
Okay, this question is, good morning, ladies. My 30-year-old young daughter still having difficulty being back at her day program after being at her home for 2 years. She is having tantrums and self-interest behavior. Day program has to give her lorazepam to calm her. We are meeting with her psychiatrist on Wednesday to discuss slight increase in her risperidone. Can you tune into how we may assist her in the going forward?
Yeah, so Sharon, tell me again, you said something about a program that she was in. What was the program?
It's just a day
Oh,
program.
a date. Okay, okay, gotcha. All right, so let's just see. I don't know what's happening here. There are, all I will say are there are a lot of individuals in a similar scenario right now. So tell me, can I have her first name, just her first name, nothing else? Oh, Sarah. Okay, great. All right, so let me see here. Okay, so all that what shows me when I tune in with her is it's like somebody's rattling her cage, literally. It's like there's so much energy in this young woman that's trying to shake loose. It's like a bunch. You get Right. So it's like all of this energy has been stuck to her for quite some time. You can consider that energy all kinds of things, anything that she's picked up, over her 30 years on this planet. And and for whatever reason right now, it literally feels like her whole energetic field is trying to be shaken loose, right? And as that happens, it's like she's throwing off um, all kinds of energy. I mean, she's got a lot of it. I mean, bless her heart. I mean, she's picked up a lot of it, and so I'm not going to give any medical advice or anything like that. But what I will say is that in this case, that support, that medical support, from her perspective anyway, looks like it is helpful in these moments, because if we could just see the sheer volume of information that she's trying to release from her energetic field, we would understand that she is really doing an amazing job trying to slough that energy off, I guess is the best way to say it. Um, so let's see what we can do to be of support here. Well, first things first, again, when we have a child that is, having challenges and to the outer world might look like they're losing it a little bit, a lot of times, we're looking at what's wrong. We're trying to fix what's wrong. We're trying to make it better. I think that Sarah really needs to hear somebody say to her, "Oh my gosh, this must be really hard for you, honey. You're really doing an amazing job. I can tell you're doing the best job that you can do in these moments. That's a lot of energy you're dealing with, my dear. And it must be really challenging for you to move through that." I think that's one of the just that people need to be talking to her in that way and saying that to her, so that she at least knows that she's recognized um, for the efforts that she is making. And she is absolutely making efforts towards sloughing off all of this old energy. Let me see if there's anything else. again, we, and I, believe me, I can imagine that when somebody is, especially our own children, are having challenges like this, I mean, we just want it to go away. We just want to fix it. And, but that perspective comes from the perspective that what she is going through in that moment is somehow wrong. Yeah, like we're not, again, we're not supposed to be feeling that. We're not supposed to be experiencing that. And it's really not true. I mean, she is experiencing what she's experiencing. And when we look at it beyond the physical realm and we look at it into the energetic realm, we see that she's just trying to dismantle so much that has clung to her for so long. And so we really want to appreciate the fact that that's where she is and acknowledge that she's doing a damn good job. I mean, she really is. She needs to hear that so that she can kind of relax in her body and let the process happen. Because right now she's perceiving the process as a wrongness or a badness, because that's, you know, let's fix it, let's make it better, let's not have that happen. And so she's, in some ways, there's a little bit of resistance on her part. So we want to shift that so she's not in resistance. She's in, okay, this is a process. This is what we're moving through at this moment. So, yeah, you're welcome. Thank you.
All right. This question is, my son shows a psychopathic, there we go, behavior. What is related to, please? Thank you so much.
Son is demonstrating psychopathic behavior.
Yes.
Is that, yeah? Okay. I just want to ask some questions just so I can clarify something. So is that like a diagnosed, some psychiatrist somewhere diagnosed this individual as psychopathic, or, okay, so no diagnosis. So that's what you're attributing these behaviors to, right? Okay. So first things first, and it's interesting, something really does want to shift today, and I can tell that what wants to shift in a big way is really is how we perceive experiences, especially how we perceive experiences that are challenging and, you know, deeply difficult. And that's the shift right here, as if we're not supposed to be experiencing any of those energies. So Sharon, was there additional information to that one? I thought I saw something pop up, but I missed it.
Yes, and it was, he mimics emotions instead of feeling them, it seems, and it was just a friend who suggested it was psychopathic.
Okay. So this is what I'm hearing really loud in this regard. So first, let's, instead of a diagnosis or instead of a label of any kind, especially in your son's case, let's perceive it from the perspective of, my child is having experiences. My child is mimicking emotion. And you might say that he's not feeling that emotion, but we don't quite know that because we're not in his body. We don't know that. We can say what we can see, which is if somebody walks into the room and they're angry and all of a sudden he starts mimicking anger, then yeah, we can say that that's taking place. I would be hesitant to say that he's not feeling, because I'm not sure that that's actually true. I get the sense that with his level of energetic sensitivity, that it is true that any energy, subtle or not subtle, unconscious to that other individual or conscious, I think it is true that he is mimicking that energy that's running through. somebody in his presence. What he's saying to me is, he says, I come across as being hostile. I come across as being hostile. Like, and he is just simply saying that right now, I'm not talking about just in his physical environment, but in his energetic environment, right? So an energetic environment is different than the physical environment. The energetic environment is what your son has the capacity to pick up, right? And his range might be much bigger than, a house or a town or a country for that matter. So one of the things that he's talking about is he can come across as hostile or aggressive or angry or whatever. But what we have to understand is that energy is running rampant out in the world right now. That energy, I don't know about you guys, but I have these moments where I can just feel this energy move through me, like, frustration, irritation, anger, rage, whatever that is, it just moves through. And there's nothing in my physical environment that tells me that I should feel that way. And yet it's moving through my body. I get the same sense with him. And so, again, back to number one, let's shift this just a little bit, because it's a capacity that he has to feel all this energy and all this information. It's a capacity. And what he's trying to do is he's trying to process that information. He's a physical body processor, is the best way I can say. I know this one because I do this myself as well. And I'm sure that there are moments when I can come across as psychotic. So in that mix. But what I'm saying is that as that energy is moving through him, we want to see that as a capacity, right? So it's a capacity. What he's trying to do is he's trying to mitigate or neutralize some of that energy of hostility, anger, rage, whatever, frustration, whatever it is. He's trying to neutralize that through his body. When people say to him, you come across as psychopathic, or you don't have feelings, or you don't have whatever, you're not feeling, you're just mimicking emotion, or, well, what ends up happening is he gets the message that he's an unfeeling human being, and he's not. He's not unfeeling. A matter of fact, he is so feeling. He is so connected to feeling that he feels everybody's energy, and because he is so connected to it in that way, he chooses, consciously or unconsciously, to transmute that energy through his form because he can. So one of the things I will say that might be of support is anything that can create a little bit of a buffering system for him, because he's a little overloaded right now with everything that he has the capacity to pick up. And so anything that can support him having a little bit more of a boundary, and he may not be wanting to or willing to create that for himself, but as we see him moving through the world, we can see him boundaried, bubbled up, whatever you want to say, so that he has a little bit more space to process what he's trying to process. Let me see if there's anything else. And I would tell him, he is so sensitive. In fact, I used to see this with kids on the spectrum when I worked in the schools, especially, where a child would, be labeled by the people around him as difficult or as challenging or as whatever, the teachers or whomever um, didn't understand the energetic implications of having that kind of um, labeling going on. And over and over and over again, we would see these kids, that kid in the classroom who the teacher had identified in this way, they showed it to her every single day. It was almost like this is how I am perceived, and therefore this is what I will reflect back to you. And we also can see that when we change our languaging, even we don't know how powerful we actually are. And when we start identifying things from a broader perspective, that broader perspective is what is made manifest. And sometimes it takes a while, sometimes it takes a bit of time of really shifting our perception. But he's working through a lot within the collective and for the collective. I'd let him know that you see that. I would see him bubbled up, and I would use whatever language you can use to reflect his capacity. Yeah. And see if that doesn't at least start taking the edge off. I'm not saying that there might not be other things that are playing out here, but first let's take that edge off. So, all right.
All right, this one is, one of my kids has been experiencing night terrors. I'm thinking of getting him a dream catcher. How can I help him?
Yeah, the dream catcher is a great visual, and with a little bit of empowerment as to how it's not the dream catcher that is going to do the trick, so to speak. What we want him to know is the dream catcher is there so that he has a place to put that energy. So he has a place to move that energy to. So we want him to be empowered, right? Instead of, okay, here you have a dream catcher, and now all of a sudden the scary stuff goes away. So the dream catcher has an energetic template that goes with it. It has a energetic signature, you might say. It's designed for that kind of experience, and we want to make sure that we put the power in his hands so that he begins to know that he can be reliant on himself to transmute that energy. Yeah. My grandson used to, when he was younger, he did it when he came to my house this time too, but he used to always say, he'd like go looking for ghosts, right? And occasionally we would be driving in my car and he'd say, well, there's a ghost on top of your car. And I would just say to him, okay, if there's a ghost on top of my car and if you can see it, you must be able to do something about it. Instead of, oh my gosh, that's there and I'm afraid of it. Let's really empower our children to know that they have these capacities. And at first they might go, no, 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 I don't want to go there. I don't want to do that. I'm scared. Well, overcoming that fear, right? Overcoming that fear of going to sleep and having a bad dream or seeing ghosts or whatever those things are is part of the reason why those experiences are there in the first place, because they're helping us overcome our fear-based reality and step into our capacity. So in this case, you could also say to him, again, so many of these kids are picking up collective energies and or past incarnations. And so, but either way, it's not about the other energies or the past incarnations. It's, in this case, it's really about him understanding his capacity. So let's teach him that from the get-go. I'll tell you a funny story just real quick, because I, I'm starting with this company, that Coherent Spaces company, and we have these world integrity space harmonizers, these units that literally create a coherent space in your, your physical energetic space. And so my grandson he hasn't been here since Christmas, and he came in and he immediately grabbed a flashlight. It was daylight, grabbed a flashlight, and he was going through my whole house. And he said he was looking for ghosts, and so he's 8 now. So he goes through the whole house. He's looking all over the place, upstairs, downstairs. Come with me so that I can check out the whole house, kind of thing. And so he came back upstairs, and I said, so what did you find? It's like, what are we working with here? He said, nope. He goes, your house feels too good. There's no ghost allowed here. So it just made me smile, and it made me kind of go, okay, that coherent space is being created by that, or supporting through that device. All right, somebody else?
Yes. Okay, this question is, my kids have been experiencing anxiety. I think some of it is collective and some of it is from our home. I have been playing guided meditations some nights for them. One of them says he is scared at night. I told them that they can ask angels for help. One of them told me he has tried to ask angels or spirit helpers for help, but nothing has changed for him.
It's interesting. I pulled a Rumi card this morning, and the card was, I don't know if you guys know that deck, but the Rumi Oracle deck is one of my favorite tarot decks. And I love it because it really over and over again just invites you back to yourself. It's like it's Rumi. I mean, what can I say? So one of the things that in this card, the card I pulled this morning was Beyond Death, Life. And in that card, it was really talking about that this external, like going to the external right now, is helpful only to a degree. We are all shifting into, and it doesn't matter if you're in a small body or a big body, a young body or an old body. It doesn't matter that at all. We are all shifting into the next iteration of ourselves, the next level of our conscious awareness. And at certain points along that pathway, we are no longer calling on the unseen in the way that we have in the past. And so does that angelic realm exist? Absolutely. Does the galactic realm exist? Absolutely. Does divine source, all that is, exist? Absolutely. All of that exists. And what we want to do now is we want to shift our perception so that we really understand that every bit of that exists within us. And again, how amazing to invite our children to go internal instead of external. How amazing to be able to teach them from the get-go that, again, that they have this capacity, that they can find what he's showing me is literally having him ask, where is the angelic realm within him, or where is the support system within him that can help this anxiety, right? So I'm experiencing anxiety. Where is the one within me that knows how to help me with anxiety, right? So we talk about this all the time in, the New World Portal and different classes that I offer. And we very often attribute this capacity or this ability to go inward like this to adults. But kids are great at this. They're being, um, they're being imprinted anyway, right? We're all imprinting our children anyway. Why not imprint them with their capacities, right? So where is the one within him that can take care of the anxiety? And when he says, no, 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 that's, there's nothing in me that can take care of the anxiety. A lot of times kids will say, I just have anxiety. Yes, I understand. You do. You have anxiety, and something within you can help that anxiety start to diminish. I wonder what that is. And then turn around and walk away and let them figure it out. Yep. They'll come back and ask more questions when they're ready, but let's keep planting that seed that all of that information is inside of them. Yeah. Yeah. Believe me, it's like as I've been reaching out, it's like I feel like I get my hand slapped over and over again. Nope, Susie, not that direction. Go in, go deeper. Yeah, and it's kind of the same way in this case. All right.
All right, this question is, I have always wondered, are they living in their light body? And what is the best way to help our kids embodying, in your opinion, and how are they wanting to do it?
So all of our bodies, you might say, coexist. You could say we are all that is, ever has been, ever will be. That we are a light, we are that light body, and we are, the physical body, and we are. The trick is, what do we identify with? Are we identifying ourselves strictly as that physical body, or are we identifying ourselves as a higher state of consciousness, right? And so this is what we really want to pay attention to. It's like, where are, okay, so this is where it circles back. I have said often that the greatest support a parent can be to helping their children integrate is to integrate themselves, right? Those parts of ourselves within all that is, ever has been, ever will be, that we say, nope, that's got to be outside. I can do anything but that, or that part of me I don't like. That part of me is good. I want to show everybody that part of me not so much, right? No, we can't do it that way. We are all that is, ever has been, ever will be. And the more that we as parents are recognizing that, allowing that all to be present within us, right? The body is what is experiencing, let's say, however much of all that is, ever has been, ever will be that we can experience. The body's where that information is being received, you might say. So it has to be okay for all that is, ever has been, ever will be to be in our bodies, right? Number one, it has to be okay for that to happen, for it to be there. You could almost say, getting to the place where we really understand that we can allow what is. It just popped up. It happened. Whatever it is there. So it's allowed to be there because it is, right? So as we start to really teach our children from a very early age, or from whatever age they are, that just because something exists and it's uncomfortable doesn't mean that it needs to be banished, doesn't mean that it needs to be exiled, or even that, quite frankly, that it can be exiled. I mean, we can push it away, we can push it down, we can push it out, but it'll always come back. It'll always come back until it's processed, till it's integrated. So that's no different for a child than it is for an adult. So we help our children to integrate first by integrating, by being present to everything that shows up for us and allowing it to be there. And so, first thing first, us. Second thing, acknowledging that, teaching, reminding that we're all that is, ever has been, ever will be. Yep, how empowering is that? And if we're all of it, that anything is allowed to be there, whether it feels wonderful or terrible. Much easier to integrate it in the moment than 40 years later, you know? So, yeah, I hope that's helpful.
And the other piece to this question is, are our children wanting to integrate?
So I'm assuming, are you talking about somebody who has a diagnosis of autism or something along those lines? Or are you talking about children in general?
Well, my personal opinion would be children in general.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So what I will say is, it really depends on the soul. It depends on the trajectory of that individual. Do they all want to be here? Yes, they are here. You know, they are physically here. But depending on again, if we're just looking at the physical reality of these children, then what ends up happening is we assume that they want, that their souls or their essence, the broader part of what brought them into this incarnation in the first place, we're assuming that it wants the same thing as somebody else wants. And that's not necessarily the case, especially for those on the spectrum. So many of these souls came with such, the essence of them is such a high frequency that they, you know, it might be nice, they might want on a human level to integrate, but the fact is that their frequency band is so high. In order to do that, in order to actually merge that with the physical body, that takes some doing, that takes some work. I will say that most of the children that I have worked with over the years are very much interested in their integration. And what integration means for each one of them can look very different. You know, we might hear integration and think, oh, that means they're going to talk. That means that they're going to be just like everybody else. It's not the case. Their frequency is way too high to show up here just like everybody else. And as a collective, they are much more interested in raising the vibrational frequency by whatever means possible, even if they can't fully be, I'll say, in charge of their bodies, right? Or regulating their bodies in the way that we might like them to. I think one of the things that we have to understand is everything is energy. And for an individual who has come with a really high vibrational frequency, so high in fact that it's a little difficult to integrate or to interface that with the physical experience, that does not mean that they are not being of absolute service to their families, to those around them, to anybody who interfaces with them. There's always an opportunity in that and in that frequency. I've watched, when you see it through energetic eyes, I've watched kids on the spectrum walk into a room or walk through a grocery store or into a clinic and completely change the vibrational frequency of that clinic, completely change or shift something for that individual. Sometimes that kid walks through the room And the frequency alone will bring up all kinds of trapped old emotion. So this is where you get the old woman in the grocery store that's yelling at, the parent because they're not, controlling their child or whatever, because the child is acting however the child is acting. It's when you look at that same scenario through energetic eyes, through vibration, what you see is that kid in their high frequency runs by this old woman or whomever she is in the grocery store, and that frequency alone has triggered something deep within the unconscious. That energy starts rushing up, and all of a sudden she's spilling out all of the things that she has suppressed for quite some time just because the kid ran by her in the grocery store. So again, we have a tendency to see everything through, the physical lens, and we want to open ourselves up. Yeah, let's open ourselves up as much as possible to what might be happening, right? And the first thing that we want to do is we don't want to assume that what is taking place is wrong, right? It's like, right? It's right, wrong? Yeah. We don't want to assume that what is taking place is wrong, because when we start from that premise, we start going into a lack of capacity instead of what our capacity actually is, instead of what the children's capacity actually is. So I don't know if that answered your question at all, but we got what we needed to say out. Yeah.
I have a lot of people saying thank you so much for not giving back or taking away their power, giving it to the dream catcher. They're very grateful for all your answers and how you're helping them. I think this last question really ties in. It may be the last, we'll see. So your earlier example of the child in the classroom reflecting the label makes me ask, am I doing that with my previous partner? He has labeled me and I keep showing him that. If that is the case, how do I manage this capacity I have?
Well, again, internal, right? It's so if as you pay attention to, as you choose to access that capacity, access what and who you actually are, not anybody else's limited version of what you are. And again, we have to understand that we're not going to blame or shame ourselves for having whatever lack of awareness that we might have around that greater capacity, because quite frankly, we were all born into families. We were all conditioned by those families. For the vast majority, I mean, nobody was trying to do, massive harm to their children by imprinting them in the way they imprinted them. But how often does a parent actually speak to a child or speak to somebody about the capacity? So in this case, your own inner child is wanting to relearn from you what that capacity is. And sometimes we can literally just sit and call forth our greatest capacity. Yeah, we can literally sit in the sphere that we are, not quite accurate, but let's do it that way visually. So the sphere that we are, that contains all that is, ever has been, ever will be. So where is the capacity? Where is the ones, the aspects of us that know our capacity, right? And bring that close. And every time the ones that feel victimized or feel like they are being seen as less than, every time they show up, because they're part of all that is, ever has been, ever will be, every time they show up, let's just speak to them. Let's interact with them in the same way that we would have wanted to be interacted with, or in the same way that we would like to interact with our children, where our inner children need that too, right? And so this somebody shows up and they show you a lesser version of yourself, or they evoke a lesser version of yourself, right there, even in your question, you already know that that lesser version of yourself is not your totality. Just because that individual can't see it doesn't mean that it's not true, that that's whatever that reflection back from that individual has really more to say about what they can or cannot see within you. Yeah. And we don't have to make them wrong for that either. They got imprinted just like everybody else did, right? So first things first is let's just call forth those aspects of ourselves that can be supportive of the aspects of ourselves that think we're less than or think that we're whatever. And as we work in that internal way, that individual is either going to start reflecting something back differently to us because they can see something new, because we can see something new, or when they do reflect back a lesser version, you might say, of who we now know ourselves to be, we'll probably course correct them a little bit. We'll probably, kind of reorient them to what they're actually engaging with. Yeah. Yeah. All right. I hope that's helpful.
Okay. Can you clarify twin flame concept?
Oh, twin flames. Okay. Yes. Long journey with this one. And I've had different beliefs around twin flame energy in the past. And what I truly believe at this point is that ultimately that other, whoever, that other, it can be a physical person, right, who is the other. I'm not exactly sure that I believe that they are like an other half or that kind of thing. What I do believe is that the energy, not the circumstances, not the outer appearance, not any of that, but the energy of that individual is capable of triggering probably more deeply for us than just about anybody else on the planet. It's like it takes a certain frequency, it takes a certain energy in order to, in order to have us release what no longer serves us, right? And so I'm going to put twin flames in quotes just because at the beginning of that twin flame experience, what you might notice is that the beginning stages of that, wow, it's like trigger, trigger, and you probably trigger both each other. Like, so, and that's where they talk about coming together and separating and coming together. Of course, you do that, right? Because you're working through all of that energy. Where I think that the general information out there about twin flame stuff goes awry is this whole thing about making that like an end result. Like somehow if you are work through all of that stuff that's being triggered, that somehow that person is, you're going to be with them in some kind of romantic way or some kind of whatever. That may or may not take place, but that's not the purpose. That's as far as I can tell. There is a twin within us also, okay? We're all that is, ever has been, ever will be. This outer individual, and we'll say, reflected as a twin or as an energy that is very similar to your own energy, reflective of your own energy. That individual is helping you get connected to the inner twin, right? And so that inner twin, higher self, lower self, whatever you want to, those words just never quite do it. But you get the idea that we become our own integrated whole when the parts of ourselves that have been so deeply imprinted, when that energy starts to loosen up, the bigger aspects of us, the greater totality that is us, begins to show up. We begin to shift our identity from what we were imprinted with to who we are in truth. And that twin, that whatever that other individual is, that individual is a great gift to us, even when they do not feel like it, because they're really helping to bring that energy up to the surface. They are a great love, you might say, because in some ways you might say they love, not in a, I don't want to say in the Valentine sense when I use that word love, but that love is unconditional in the sense that they will push and push and push, not even knowing that they're doing it, until everything is released. So we shift the perception from imprinted to, or from conditional self to unconditional self. So that's what I know so far anyway.
Last thought, since we have 5 minutes.
Just a question, what wants to shift in your perception? What wants to shift from conditioned self to unconditioned or unconditional, right? So we can take that word unconditional into every single facet and aspect of our life. So when something shows up within our own energy field, can we unconditionally allow it to exist? Or are we going to try to fix it? Yeah. Even the attempt to fix something has an indication that something is wrong, right? Can we shift our perception around things that feel uncomfortable? Because that's the one that gets us over and over again. When something feels uncomfortable, it's as if it should not exist. And that's the furthest thing from the truth. Something that feels uncomfortable is simply something that is, we haven't been willing to be present with. We haven't been yet capable to be just with it. Yeah. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that we don't take steps and we don't support ourselves in whatever ways that we support ourselves through whatever situation, if it's a physical issue, if it's a emotional, whatever. But again, where is that support coming from? Is that support coming from a place of fear, anxiety, stress? I'm going to fix you, never really works. Doesn't really work for any aspects of ourselves. Doesn't work for any people outside of ourselves either. It's not our job to fix. It's our job to be present to be with, because that's the very thing that allows us to move into an unconditional state. So where can we start with that unconditionality? Whatever it is, first and foremost, is allowed to be there. Yeah, first and foremost, it's allowed to exist. And whatever comes up because that situation exists is uncovering something that will ultimately be a great gift to you. So we might as well use it for what it is for instead of pushing it away. Yeah. Yeah. It's all about shifting from conditioned love to unconditional, from functioning from the parts of ourselves that have been conditioned into limitation and moving into the parts of ourselves that are literally unconditional. And the facade, the erroneous belief that somehow when you shift more into an unconditional state, that all of a sudden your life will be all, fairies and butterflies and dreamy. No, we don't eliminate feeling. We get better at it. We get better at being present to what is. And this goes right back to this young man that we talked about earlier today. It's like that's exactly what he is helping and attempting to support us in, Yeah, releasing the harshness to ourselves, being kind, being generous to ourselves, being loving. There you go. All right. Yeah. So there we have it, at least for today. So, all right. Anything else, Sharon? No. All right. Beautiful. Well, thank you guys so much for being here. I really appreciate your questions. And yeah, we're just all evolving each other, to the next iteration of ourselves. So where do we go from here? We shall see. All right. Lots of love. Bye.